I tell you, Charles, either hotel internet is getting worse or I don't know what. It's amazing I was ever able to do shows from hotels previously. But how are you, Charles?
I'm great, Jason. What happened to your tuxedo?
My tuxedo.
I thought you were going.
No.
I thought you were
Yeah,
going down to
yeah.
the inauguration. Going to sit next to Melania.
No, no tuxedo.
No. Okay.
I didn't get invited. I did come to go to the inauguration, but now it's inside and it basically screwed up everybody's plans. Of course, we want to make sure nobody tries to do anything weird to Donald Trump. They have tried to assassinate him several times, but hopefully that won't happen again.
Yeah, I mean the nerve of the swamp. Honestly, I mean it would be one thing, and I think people would probably, unfortunately, go along with it. It would be one thing if the swamp actually ran the world well. The
Right.
budget was in surplus, our debt was going down, private sector incomes were rising, we had no crime, no natural responses to natural events were swift and effective. We had allies who loved us. We were at peace around the world. We told the aliens, don't you dare come near motherfucking Earth. This is our place. You have the rest of the universe. I mean, instead we have a collection of. It's an insult to call them morons. I mean, morons are smarter than Janet Yellen and Joe Biden and Ha Ha Harris and this team of incompetent, dangerous fools who's been in at the top levels in the front of the office for 8 years under Obama, 8 years under Clinton, four under HW, eight under W, and now four under the hapless douche Biden. And with all this, with all the problems, we're so much worse off in 2025 than we were in 1993 when the Soviet Union had blown up and China wasn't a thing yet. India was still socialist. They're all eating dirt sandwiches over there. I mean, and Europe wasn't unified. Hong Kong wasn't part of China. We're so much worse off today. And these smug assholes are giving interviews on PMSNBC and Chicken Noodle News and these other networks talking about surveys. There's one survey where over half the federal government believes they're going to resist Trump. Oh yeah, watch what happens to you, people who don't want to come into work. Because I think,
what do they mean by resist Trump? They sort of did that last time, didn't they? It's really terrible.
Well, so I had a friend, I won't say his name, but he was ambassador to the Bahamas, and before that, he was actually deputy to Bolton when Bolton was at the UN, representing the U.S. And this friend had a lot of meetings in the White House, and he explained that the dynamic is. I mean, if you think I'd never set foot in 21st century 3D, but I can tell you the way Dylan Reed worked and other places I was involved with, we always use the expression "who's in the room," meaning who is in the room when the final decisions are made. And you would sit around, you negotiate whatever the issue is, you fight about it politely, but you go back and forth with arguments on major decisions, and a decision would be reached. And in no way, shape, or form was it possible for some secretary or somebody in the print office or some messenger or some, buddy on the legal staff to say, well, that's not what the people in the room really meant. We're going to draft what actually happens and they'll never know. That's the way Washington, D.C. works. The people with the titles make grand pronouncements, but when it comes time to get a law into the Federal Register and regulations around that law implemented, it's faceless bureaucrats who think their jobs are secure, their high-paid lifestyle is secure. Oftentimes, there was a story recently, somebody managed actually to have two full-time jobs. They're not doing anything, right? They're at home.
Right.
So why not have two or three full-time jobs, right? So there's these highly paid morons, not qualified to be morons, have sent the ship of state, into the inferno. Literally, look at Los Angeles. And there has to be now a reckoning because I saw a picture of B-Rock and Michelle. I think it's Michelle's, I don't know, significant birthday recently. And it's a picture of the two of them casually dressed around some probably super expensive table that was sold to them. It's probably worth, 20% of what they paid for it. But a monster wine cellar. I mean, you've been in restaurant wine cellars in New York. I'm thinking of 21 Club downstairs. There's some amazing wine cellars. This wine cellar had to have cost them millions of dollars. And there they are sitting with shit-eating grins, the two of them, casually dressed in this monstrosity. And that's a message for all the grifters and criminals in public school who don't, in private school, who don't want to work and are prepared to be tools to the donor class. That you just, if you play your cards right and you do as you're told behind the scene, you can be plucked from obscurity. You're a shitty student in some private school in Hawaii. Next thing you know, that's the picture. You're at Harvard Law School, president of the Law Review, on a track to be president of the United States for having done nothing significant positive in your life. Absolutely nothing. And now you're sitting there in your one of your many multi-million-dollar mansions, sending a message to the world that hard work and inventing new products and services is for the idiots. Instead, be a tool, be a grifter, be a corrupt fool, and you can have 4 mansions. You can have a wine cellar, just like me and the mooch. And
Wow.
that's a message that has to be turned around. This idea, it really does. I mean, this idea that you can now supposedly Hee Haw Harris is said to get a $20 million book deal. I mean, she can barely read a book, let alone write a book, and that has anything. I mean, what would her book possibly say that was of interest? I mean, if she detailed her conniving to get into Willie Brown's crotch, and then from there become a senator, an attorney general, and then senator, and a vice president, and almost president of the United States. If she detailed the dirty tricks that she pulled to maneuver that way, and explain why she married Emhoff, who supposedly, there's one rumor I read on Twitter, I don't know if it's true, but supposedly they're breaking up because Emhoff may have had an affair with a campaign staffer. I could believe that, but I like to see more corroboration of it. You have people looking at this and saying, why should I invent a 3D camera the way Jason did? Put my company at risk, have many, many sleepless nights, not knowing if it's going to work, finally get it done, and then have, competitive issues make it tough to make money in the area. Why should I do all that when I could just sleep with Willie Brown or his equivalent and move my way up the food chain to having 4 mansions, pretending I'm a skeet shooter? I mean, I love that. Obama said, I'm a skeet shooter. Right. There's lots of left-handed skeet shooters out there. And that's the kind of thing you can do growing up and living in Chicago. And then, Columbia, it's easy to be a skeet shooter. You walk out the front door in Manhattan and you say, let's go to the skeet shooting range, except there isn't one in Manhattan. It's just, his stories are preposterous. And then, I think this whole idea, I think the deep state is thumbing its nose at the rest of us, saying, we decide who wins and loses. We'll see what happens at the inauguration. I hope you remain safe, Jason. And if there's any sort of an incident, please let us, on Twitter or on X and email, by email, just let us know you're safe. But it's just a disgrace that Joe Biden would have the gall. I mean, he recently, according to reports I read, he just decided that he can say the Equal Rights Amendment is part of the Constitution because he believes it's law. Fuck off, geezer. And that's just not even the way.
Let's stay on this
it's not
for a
the way
second,
America
Charles.
works.
I was confused by this because what the hell is he even talking about? Where did he get this from?
So the issue is that they began the process of trying to get the Equal Rights Amendment ratified. And when it was originally proposed, it was just to do with men and women. Now they're trying to expand it and make it all 93 variations of what you could be. But there's a process by which you amend the Constitution. It's set forth in the Constitution. It's been interpreted, various decisions. And the sitting president of the United States cannot just say, well, there's a process, it's taking too long, I decide what is. This is the same guy who said, you know what? The Supreme Court said I can't cancel student loan. Fuck you. I'm the president of the United States. I got 2 mansions I don't deserve. By the idiot who is the smartest person I know, Hunter Biden, who's the head of my grifter enterprise. I'm just going to cancel student loan debt, even though after the Supreme Court said he couldn't do it. He did it. He's done it repeatedly. This is a team that has gone around the world saying Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and they're shredding the Constitution. Lord knows what this creep is going to do between now and excuse me, and the 20th, when he's supposed to be out there. And Lord knows what time bombs he set for Trump to contend with in the early days of his new administration. This man, he better not get a book deal. Comer has said, I believe, that he's referred Hunter and James for criminal prosecution. Let's hope that's true. And there now needs to be this whole, when I was in college a long time ago, actually I entered college 51 years ago, the public sector was not really a place where you could make money. I mean, it was a place where you truly had to serve, and nonprofits towed the line for the most part. They weren't mechanisms for monopolists like Bill Gates to pretend, George Soros, to pretend that they were to wash their reputations via their philanthropy. And really, Elizabeth Warren, who is just a disgusting piece of shit. And that woman is, I don't know that I've ever met a Native American, but I mean, to go as a white person with high cheekbones and maneuver yourself into a tenured slot at Harvard by pretending you're Native American and writing a cookbook about your Native American, recipes that you remember, and only to discover that she made the whole stuff up, and to stay in government, to lecture other people about the evils of being rich, when she herself has amassed a huge net worth in despicable ways, preying on people with trouble with their mortgage loans and stuff like that. This is a horrible human being, and she's out there talking about how in the private sector people are gouging consumers. The biggest gougers on the planet are people who work in government. They've pushed up the cost of living. A dozen eggs is now $10 across the country. It was 99 cents when Joe Biden pretended to assume the office of presidency, of the president. So wasteful, deficit-prone, debt-racked government has pushed up the cost of everything. They're the price gougers. And then these celebrants, who go to different victory parties where donors give them money for their campaigns, who live large, who don't really do any work, most of them. They have staffs pretending that they're doing work. To go around getting rich off it is outrageous. And in particular, in the charity world, to have this merger of perpetual political campaigns and the various charities that families are associated with, various off-market deals that they get, various real estate gifts that they get, that needs to be just completely eviscerated.
Charles, let me stop you for a second, because you're talking about some important stuff and you're moving too fast here. The price gouging thing, it feels like the first time we heard that was when Kamala Harris gave some kind of speech and she was like, oh yeah, price gouging. And it's like, wait a minute, what? And now it's all they talk about is price gouging. And I think you just clarified it. They have caused all the prices to go up. So they want people to think there's price gouging going on. And as you're talking about nonprofits, you reminded me that, during the Pam Bondi confirmation hearing, there was 2 days of it, actually. I don't know if everybody knows that. The one where they didn't have Pam Bondi was way less exciting, but it was quite interesting. They had our friend Mary McCord and this woman, Gilbert, her last name is, she's part of this public citizen thing. And this is a nonprofit. Here she is, Lisa Gilbert. She was there testifying. And the thing that's interesting about this, Charles, is that right away, I knew this thing stank to high heaven. So I just said, public citizen EIN. And I'm not going to dive into this because I know you don't like talking about things that you haven't researched and looked into. But I just wanted to show this to you quickly because it goes exactly to what you are talking about right now. So Public Citizen Inc. is a 501c4. We see it right here. And on their recent filing here, they tell us they're a 501c4. So that allows them to do all kinds of political stuff. You've spent years telling the Crowdsource the Truth audience about this. And then the thing that I also found super interesting is that if we say public citizen foundation, here's the trick. They've got a 501c3 that's funneling tons of money into this thing. And it reeks. I mean, I don't know enough about this to describe exactly what's wrong with it, but it reeks of being, just a simple workaround loophole to get around. This one is the 501c3. So people can donate lots of money to this, get their tax deductions, and then that money goes right over to the 501c4, where Lisa and other scumbags there get paid lots and lots of money to do lawfare against Trump and, all this kind of stuff that they're supporting Mary McCord. It's terrible.
It's absolutely terrible. And it's not what it was originally intended. Remember that in the Constitution, people forget this, the founders had personal knowledge of what happened when absolute authority runs out of money and runs amok. So that one of the origins of the English Civil War, which I know our audience is, and you are expert on, I'm not an expert on it, but it ran, I think, from 1649 roughly to 1662 or 3 roughly. And prior to then, the monarchs, Queen Elizabeth had really denuded the treasury with her various exploits, and King James then inherited a mess, and he needed to raise money. So he arbitrarily started imposing taxes to ostensibly to collect money for ships on locations inside the UK that were not on the sea coast, in violation then of the law in theory and the practice. And that just exacerbated tensions between this monarch who was Scottish, and which people in England didn't like very much, and had strange connections to France. So they were suspicious about the family. Anyway, this idea that you're just going to use income taxes and taxes on wealthy people to impose tyrannical will was something that the founders did not believe should happen. So they explicitly prohibited income taxes. They were explicitly prohibited in the Constitution. Lincoln, to finance the war against the South, arbitrarily imposed an income tax, which eventually was struck down by the Supreme Court. And so that's why the amendment had to be instituted to create an income tax in 1913. I say all this to explain that the original idea of a charity was that it truly was a gift. For over 100 years, close to 200 years, 150 years anyway, there was a lot of philanthropic activity in the United States, but you didn't get a tax benefit from doing it. And I think the 1913 income tax was a bad idea. Founders understood it earlier that it would have been a bad idea. We've had the experiment for over 110 years. It's time to end it. And in the process, really go after these charities. I mean, you have this Bill Gates who is really, I mean, there's something wrong with that dude. There's probably quite a lot wrong with him to go around and push this idea of many, many vaccinations. When I was a little kid, I think I had 2 or 3. I think my children might have had 6. Now children get something like 90. And, what are these vaccines? Are many of these actually vaccines? I mean, you were the first to point out, and one of the first to point out, that the COVID, quote, vaccine wasn't in fact a vaccine.
Yeah.
And now, people are saying, well, of course, we all knew that. No, that wasn't the case.
No, Dershowitz got all pissed off about it.
Yeah. And so, here's Bill Gates. Maybe he's smart. He certainly has good business, a jugular instinct for creating monopolies. That he knows how to do. But how does he style himself as a health expert? He never even got the first level of college degree, let alone going through medical school, let alone, actually be. And this man is crafting thinks he can craft the global health system. and get us to eat fake meat and shit water, and it's fucking one crazy idea after the next.
Well,
And through his foundation, give money to be one of the biggest funders of the Clinton operation, to be, if not the biggest, one of the biggest funders of Tedros at the World Health Organization. And this man needs to have his head examined. And at this stage, fair warning. I gave that foundation fair warning in 2016 that they were engaged in illegal activities, what are called taxable expenditures. They were claiming they were making deductions to public charities like the Clinton Foundation, which weren't in fact public charities. Ordinarily, the IRS, for one simple infraction, would levy a heavy excise tax. But if there's a pattern and practice of deceiving the public, which I think the Gates Foundation has been doing, you shut that motherfucker down and you assess monstrous taxes against Bill, Melinda, anyone, Warren Buffett, anyone associated with a leadership role of that thing needs, as Peter Daszak has now happened to him, needs to be barred for life from engaging in any position of trust involving a charity, and needs to be heavily fined. And Bill Gates, he should be fined out into poverty, and possibly go to jail.
yeah, definitely.
You know, right? And because again, the trick, and I don't know if you could still do it, but the trick that Gates employed was to say that he was making a donation of valuable Microsoft stock into the Gates Foundation without revealing that he still controlled the Gates Foundation. So that's not actually a gift, in my view. It's just a shuffling of paper from one pocket to the other, whereby he got a gigantic tax refund, or was able to have, if he could. Maybe he didn't take advantage of it, but he could have availed himself of a gigantic tax deduction. And look at the damage this man has done. For a long time, I mean, in my impressionable youth, thought, well, Gates must be something special about the guy. He created Microsoft out of thin air. He's a multi-billionaire for most of his life. He's got this philanthropy. He's got the ability to hire experts to make it right. It must be something positive about him. No, the guy's an ogre, as is Soros. And then we have these confirmation hearings. Da Nang Dick Blumenthal is making an issue of billionaires, and here's a guy he married into a near billionaire family. That's why he's got a safe seat in an expensive media market in Connecticut. As a senator, he's a moron, a liar about key aspects of his career. He claimed to have been in Vietnam. He's on the Tim Waltz program. At least he's not necessarily putting tampons in men's rooms. But I mean, the guy, these senators who are daring to look down at a Pete Hegseth, and they've never done anything, most of them. Ron Johnson is a good man. He's a successful career in business, a lot of experience. But most of these people who are sitting in the confirmation hearings claiming that, so-and-so is not qualified for the job, are not qualified. Forget about being senators. They're not qualified to be dog catchers, many of them. And it's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that they would sit here. Donald Trump won perhaps the most historic comeback victory in American history decisively, particularly when you look across at county level, because big cities skew the results because so many of them are corrupt. And so many of the election results actually shouldn't be trusted. But when you look at our 4,000 counties, I think roughly 90+% of them went to Trump. People who'd never turned out to vote for before, younger people, turned out for Trump. Blacks voted for Trump, Hispanics, women, all sorts of people who historically did not vote for Republicans came out to vote for Trump. People are thirsty for competence, tired of this bullshit. Recently, I think a federal appeals court struck down one of Barack Obama's, quote, signature accomplishments, DACA. Is apparently now been ruled unconstitutional. Obamacare is a disaster. We have, not going to say who it is, but we have a friend who is wealthy and looked after and very clever and whatever. And he's got a serious problem. And the doctors are saying, well, you can get it. Maybe you can come see a doctor in 3 weeks. I mean, that's not the way the healthcare system used to work when I was a child. You had a serious problem, and the doctor would see you right away. The doctor might even come to your house.
Yeah.
But now we have, thanks to Chelsea Clinton and all these